Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the shadowy streets of medieval Europe, where the air is thick with smoke, the cobblestones are slick with last week's rain and something else, and flickering lanterns signal more than just safe passage. They're a beacon for a trade as old as time. You're not a knight, or a merchant, or even a baker's apprentice. No, tonight you're one of the most visible, yet invisible people in town. Harlot, a streetwalker. A woman whose worth is measured in coin, not kindness. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere far away, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're all drifting off. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the slop of the lower quarter, feet numb from the cold, breath visible in the damp air. It smells of boiled cabbage, spilled ale, and a hint of burning meat, or possibly burning socks. Hard to tell. Your dress is patched, your underclothes thinner than political alliances at court, and your evening shift is just beginning. Welcome to work. Most folks avert their gaze when you pass. Others stare, some with pity, some with hunger, and some with that dull, judgmental look people get when they think they're better than you because they own a goat and a legal marriage. But at least tonight, the guards aren't chasing you. Progress. You duck under a crooked sign, a faded painting of a red flower. This is home, if you want to call it that. It's technically a brothel, but really it's a crumbling tenement full of creaking floors, giggling lies, and a madam who can gut a trout and a drunk with equal precision. You walk in, the lantern casting reddish shadows on the walls. It's warmish inside, thick with the scent of sweat and rosewater, and muffled moans already echo from upstairs. Someone's on time tonight. Here, you're not just a body. You're a cleaner, a confidant, a makeup artist, a therapist, only without any recognition or tips. You learn to read people the way monks read scripture. The drunk ones always ask for love. The angry ones want control. And the sad ones? They just want to be seen. And then there's the costume of your profession, not silk or pearls, unless you stole them, but color. That's the giveaway. In medieval England, sumptuary laws tried to restrict what you could wear. You weren't allowed luxurious fabrics or noble colors, unless, of course, it suited a local lord's taste. Historians still argue whether red was enforced or adopted, but the truth is, red worked. Red said, I'm here, I'm available, and I'm surviving. You rub your tired neck. There's no doctor if you get hurt. No union. No sick days. Just the rhythm of the night and the hope that the man 2 doors down isn't the one who broke your friend's arm last week. The authorities won't help, not unless it benefits them. Most of the time, you're safer in numbers. So you and the others huddle together when you're off duty, telling each other stories, laughing louder than necessary, like armor against what waits outside. In bigger cities like Paris or London, brothels were sometimes semi-legal. The church pretended not to notice as long as taxes were paid. One bishop allegedly ran his own reform house for sinful women, complete with a courtyard and mandatory prayers. But more often than not, your brothel is overseen by someone like Helga. She once threw a customer out a second-story window for trying to pay in buttons. You trust her. Mostly. You eat when there's food. Tonight, it's a stale heel of rye bread and something vaguely like stew, which includes a suspicious chunk you decide not to inspect too closely. Your stomach grumbles, but at least it's not empty. You're used to that background ache. Hunger, after all, is cheaper than hope. There's one candle left in the box. You light it carefully, the flame flickering as if it, too, is nervous. It casts long shadows across the warped floorboards and reflects off a small shard of mirror stuck to the wall with wax. You check your face. Not for beauty, there's no illusion there, but for bruises, blotches, anything that might scare away business. You smear a bit of wine on your lips, pinch your cheeks for color, and practice a smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Once, you wanted to be a seamstress. Or maybe a baker. Something simple, steady, with a warm fire and someone who didn't call you wench before they even asked her name. But the road from good girl to bad woman is short and often starts with famine, abandonment, or war. Or just being in the wrong place with the wrong man and no coin for the midwife. They say the city has a heart, but you haven't seen it. If it does, it beats quietly somewhere far from here, muffled beneath the robes of those who speak of virtue by day and visit you by night. Still you're here, breathing, existing, and sometimes in the moments between customers, you hum to yourself and imagine what it would feel like to rest. Just rest. You curl into a corner of the communal room, body curled around your coin pouch like it's a newborn. Outside, the rain begins again, drumming softly against the warped shutters. You listen. Let your eyes close for just a second. You dream of nothing. You wake to the creak of the front door and the scuff of muddy boots across the floor. Morning isn't far off, but sleep here is never long, never deep, and never guaranteed. One moment you're dreaming of apples, the next, someone's yelling about his missing purse and blaming the nearest breathing body, which tonight happens to be you. By now, you've learned the right tone to defuse angry men. Soft but firm. Eyes down but not too far. You speak just enough to let them believe they're in charge. It works. Usually. This time, Helga steps in, arm folded across her chest, daring him to press his luck. He leaves, cursing, but not before knocking over the candle. You sigh, pick it up, and realize it's snapped in half. Just like your patience. When the room quiets, you settle again and think, briefly, about how you got here. You weren't born into this. No one is. You were a milkmaid once, in a village whose name most people can't pronounce and no one remembers. You rose before dawn to squeeze life from cows and slept on hay you shared with fleas and hope. Then the crops failed. Or your father died. Or a soldier came through with coin and charm. Historians still argue whether rural women migrated willingly or were trafficked under the guise of opportunity, but the truth for you was simple: starve or take your chances in the city. The journey wasn't epic. It was wet, cold, and too long. You shared the road with oxen, pilgrims, and occasional noble's carriage whose wheels splattered you with more than just mud. You begged for bread, pawned your shoes, and by the time the city walls came into view, your dreams had worn thinner than your dress. A woman met you at the gates. Called herself Aunt Bet. She said she had worked for a bright-eyed girl like you. You believed her. Everyone does at first. She smiled with more teeth than sincerity and promised warm meals and honest coin. 2 nights later, you were in a bed that wasn't yours, under a man who didn't ask, and Aunt Bet had vanished with your shoes, your coin, and what was left of your dignity. That's the real beginning, isn't it? In medieval towns, harlotry often followed the collapse of stability, economic, personal, or political. War displaced families. Famine hollowed out villages. Orphan girls filled city streets, easily preyed upon. Many brothels recruited directly from these newcomers, offering shelter in exchange for entertainment services. You were never really asked, just shown where to undress. Some managed better than others. The pretty ones, the clever ones, they rose faster. Got better rooms, better clients, sometimes even gifts. You remember one girl, Isabel. She had green eyes and could cry on command. Men gave her shoes, trinkets, even a small cat. She vanished one night. Rumor says she ran off with a baron. More likely, she was tossed into the river after refusing something. You don't ask too many questions in this life. Not every harlot worked in a brothel either. Some were streetwalkers, dodging guards and weather alike. Others clung to taverns, offering themselves between mugs of ale and slurred lullabies. The lucky ones found patrons, wealthy men who paid for exclusivity. But even those arrangements came with conditions. Make him angry, make him bored, and you're back on the street with nothing but a broken comb and your old reputation. The line between mistress and servant was thin. Some men kept girls like possessions, dressed them in lace, and showed them off like war horses. But they never married them. That's where the fantasy ended. You weren't a wife. You were a secret. Or worse, a joke among noble friends. You knew one girl, Martha, who tried to climb higher. She wrote letters in fine Latin, wore veils like a noblewoman, and even dyed her teeth black like the French courtesans thought fashionable. But it didn't matter. In the end, her noble friend married a girl half her age, and Martha ended up begging at the cathedral steps, pretending she was mute to gain more sympathy. There's a joke among the girls. You can always tell a rich man by how fast he forgets your name. Still, not all stories were tragic. Some found ways to survive with a shred of dignity intact. One enterprising woman you knew made perfumes from crushed herbs and spoiled wine. She sold them to other harlots, doubling her coin. Another embroidered lace in secret, passing it through the tavern maids to market. You admire those women. They worked within the walls they were given, carving tiny windows where none existed. You tried once to leave, packed your few things, made it halfway down the road before a thief took your bag and your shoes. Came back barefoot and ashamed. Helga just nodded and handed you a bowl of soup. No one mocked you. They'd all tried the same thing once. And sometimes, at your lowest, you wonder if this is what fate had planned all along. If there ever really was a choice. You lie back now, eyes on the ceiling. A spider moves in the corner, patient and quiet. Much like you. Your breath evens out. For now, it's enough. You're still here. And somehow, that's a kind of victory. You're up before the sun today, not because you're rested. Nobody's ever truly rested here, but because there's a pounding on the door downstairs. The kind of knock that means either a tax collector, city guard, or worse, a priest with a clipboard. You groan and pull a cloak around your shoulders. It's damp, of course. Everything here is always slightly damp, like the walls are weeping with you. Helga answers the door. You listen from the stairs, crouched out of sight, heart thudding with that familiar cocktail of anxiety and apathy. It's the inspector again. Thin lips, tired eyes, and a feather quill tucked behind one ear, like he thinks that makes him clever. He's not here to shut you down, at least not today. No, today he's here for the ledger. Yep, you're in a licensed brothel. Surprise. That's the thing no one outside these walls really understands. In many medieval cities, Florence, London, Vienna, Avignon, your profession wasn't just tolerated. It was managed, regulated, even taxed. Because as long as harlotry existed, and let's be honest, it always existed, the church, the city preferred it to be organized, profitable, and slightly out of sight. That way, everyone could pretend to be shocked by your existence while still making money off it. You slide down the stair quietly as Helga hands over the ledger. He opens it, brows knitting. Names, ages, hours worked, coin collected. It's all there. Including your own record, likely marked with a little scribble next to last Thursday, the night you threw up on a friar's boots. He deserved it. Called you a demon mid-kiss. Where's Anna? The inspector asks. Helga pauses just long enough. You already know. Anna ran. Again. Maybe she made it to the riverboat this time. Maybe she didn't. That's one less girl and one more mark on the brothel's record. Too many disappearances, and they'll revoke the license. Then you're all out on the streets, literally and figuratively. Historians still argue whether these licenses were protective or predatory. On one hand, they offered structure. You had designated hours, official protection from guard harassing you, and supposedly a better chance of avoiding arrest. On the other hand, these systems turned your body into paperwork. You weren't a woman. You were an entry in a ledger. Back in the common room, the girls whisper about which cities are worse. Florence makes you wear striped veils. Avignon demands monthly moral exams. London gives you a copper token to wear on your dress, as if branding you with shame was somehow subtle. Still, you prefer being legal. Barely. It's better than hiding in the alleys, hoping no one recognizes you for Mass. Some cities even set up official stews. Not the food, sadly, but government-run brothels. These were usually located near bathhouses, which makes sense when you think about the logistics. Men came for a wash, stayed for a cuddle, and everyone left slightly cleaner and a lot poorer. Ironically, the church often owned the land under these places. One bishop was reportedly the landlord of 6 different brothels in 14th century Paris. That's some divine diversification. Of course, he insisted the profits went to charity, probably to pay for new choir robes. Or incense. Lots and lots of incense. Meanwhile, sermons still thundered against the sins of the flesh. You'd sit in the back of the cathedral, head bowed, listening to a priest condemn the very act he paid you for last Tuesday. Your favorite moment is when they quote St. Augustine. It is better to have harlots than to be plagued by lust. The congregation nods solemnly. You roll your eyes. There's a hierarchy too. You're not just the harlot. You're a licensed harlot. That means something, however little. Street girls get no protections. They sleep where they fall, dodge guards who pretend not to recognize them, and risk beatings for every coin. Worse, they're often seen as criminals, not workers. And if they're caught without a man's written consent, or worse, caught serving one of the city's protected elites, they're punished brutally. Stocks, whippings, or exile. You knew a girl once, Thomasina, who pretended to be part of a licensed house just to avoid the guards. She sewed her own badge and paid a street kid to shout "client arriving" when a guard approached. It worked for a while. Then someone ratted her out. Last you heard, she was in the mines. Or dead. Probably both. Back in the brothel, Helga closes the door behind the inspector. The ledger's return to its hiding place, behind the loose stone near the fireplace. You all pretend not to have listened, but everyone has. You exchange glances. Another inspection passed. Another day on the right side of the law. Barely. Helga calls for breakfast, which today is a piece of cheese the size of a pigeon's foot and a crust of bread too hard to chew but too precious to waste. You dip it in water. Softens it a little. Tastes like regret. One girl, Mika, has a bruise on her jaw. She says she tripped. No one believes her, but no one presses. This place is safer than most, but safety is a spectrum, not a promise. A client arrives early, a merchant with too many rings and a beer that smells like dried figs. He always insists on being called "my lord," even though his house is next to the fishmonger's. You draw the short straw. Again. You sigh, rise, and plaster on your smile. As you follow him up the stairs, you think about the absurdity of it all. The church bans lust, but profits from your rent. The city criminalizes your work, but demands taxes from it. And you're the hinge between hypocrisy and survival. Still, there's something strangely comforting in the bureaucracy. If you're going to be invisible, it's almost reassuring to know someone has officially recorded your existence, even if it's just in ink. The fig breath merchant finally leaves around mid-morning, grumbling about the price and muttering something about loyalty discounts. You smile and nod as he shuffles out, but as soon as the door clicks shut, you exhale with a kind of exhaustion that lives deep in your bones. You reach for a basin and splash water on your face. It's cold, like always. The kind of cold that doesn't wake you up, it just reminds you you're still here. You stare at your reflection in the warped bronze mirror. Your face is a little thinner, your eyes a little more tired than they were last spring, but you're still recognizable. You've seen girls change faster, seen the work grind them down until they vanish into the job entirely, their real names forgotten, replaced with nicknames that clients can pronounce and forget in equal measure. Today is laundry day. That means dragging the linens and chemises to the river, or at least to the stinking wash house 3 streets down. You wrap everything into a cloth bundle and heave it onto your back. It's heavier than it should be, but so are most things here. Outside, The streets hum with the clatter of carts and the mutter of markets. You pass butchers with bloodied aprons, spice vendors hawking with painted fingers, and fishwives yelling over baskets of twitching silver. The city smells like sweat and salt and firewood. You almost miss the countryside sometimes. Almost. You're not invisible out here. Not exactly. People see you. Some scowl. Some leer. Most pretend they don't notice. A few women spit. One whispers something to her child while tugging him away, like your very presence might make him grow horns. You want to shout, "I do laundry too, you know?" But what's the point? It's always a performance. You move with a little more caution in public, because even though you're licensed, you're still vulnerable. You remember the girl last year who was accused of seducing a magistrate's son. Never mind that the son had paid her, begged her, even promised her his ring. The magistrate claimed she bewitched him. She was publicly shaved and flogged. Everyone pretended not to know her. Even you. Historians still argue whether public perception of harlots was worse than the legal penalties themselves. Either way, the judgment followed you like a shadow. You could behave perfectly, never cause a stir, even pay your taxes early, and still be labeled a moral contagion. At the wash house, you join other women beating sheets against wooden boards. Some are washerwives. Others are just wives. A few glance your way and snicker behind their hands. You don't respond. Instead, you scrub at a wine stain on a sleeve, trying not to picture how it got there. You once tried to explain the difference between survival and sin to a nun. She didn't get it. Or maybe she did and just couldn't admit it. Either way, you remember what she said. Your suffering is a consequence of your choices. You wanted to ask what choices exactly? The hunger? The flood? The uncle with the wandering hands? But again, what's the point? One of the washerwomen offers you a broken biscuit. It's stale, but you take it with thanks. There are moments like this. Tiny kindnesses. Not everyone sees you as filth. Some just see you as tired. You head back to the brothel with your load of wet linens, muscles aching from the weight and the cold. You pause at a fountain to rest, watching a dog chase pigeons in slow, stupid circles. You smile. It's the kind of small joy you collect like shiny stones. By midday, the sun breaks through the clouds. It lights up the cracked windows and soot-streaked walls of your street, making even the filth shimmer for a moment. You think about what it would feel like to lie in clean grass, to have someone brush your hair just because they wanted to, not because they paid for the privilege. Inside, Helga hangs the linens near the hearth. You help, shaking out one that's embroidered at the corners, someone's wedding sheet, maybe repurposed like everything else. There's a story in every thread, and none of them have happy endings. The house gets busier in the afternoon. A courier brings word that the bishop's envoy is in town. That usually means extra rules, extra inspections, and more sermons from men who hide wine in their robes. One girl groans. Another rolls her eyes and jokes. Better dust off your Latin. You chuckle. You did learn a bit, actually. Enough to fake a pious nod. The irony, of course, is that clergy were some of your steadiest customers. Priests, monks, even a few abbots. They'd whisper prayers while touching your face, as if that made it less sinful. One, a portly canon from Bordeaux, insisted on reciting psalms during the act. You try not to laugh, but couldn't help it when he rhymed righteous with delight us. You can't blame them entirely. Celibacy was more of a guideline than a law in many places, and brothels were considered the lesser evil, a social valve to keep lust from boiling over into crime. There's even a saying in some towns, better a paid woman than a stolen daughter. You're not sure how comforting that's supposed to be. The girls prepare for evening. You help braid hair, adjust bodices, share the last of the rouge powder someone smuggled in from Bruges. You dab a bit on your cheeks. The tin smells like crushed roses and ashes. Tonight feels like one of the heavy ones. You can tell. There's a weight in the air, like thunder hiding behind the stars. You wonder if someone will cry tonight. You wonder if it'll be you. The bells toll from the cathedral tower. You close your eyes and listen, letting the sound soak into your chest. It's a reminder the world outside keeps spinning, even if you're stuck in place. You open your eyes and breathe deep. Another night begins. The bells fade, but the ache in your legs doesn't. You drag your fingers through your hair, still damp from river spray and smoke, and smooth your skirts. Not your best gown, but the one without the obvious wine blotch and the ripped hem. Good enough for tonight's clientele, who tend to be less interested in tailoring and more in compliance. The other girls gather in the common room, the floorboards creaking under the familiar shuffle of practiced pacing. A few of you sit by the hearth, basking in its fading warmth, and compare rumors. Someone says a royal envoy was spotted near the docks. Another girl swears she saw a nobleman sneaking into a house on Lantern Street with a basket of pears and a leash. No one asks too many questions. Medieval gossip is just medieval truth waiting for a bard. Tonight's first knock isn't a drunken sailor or bored apprentice. It's someone quieter. A scribe, ink-stained hands, parchment rolled in his sleeve, the scent of goose quill and damp vellum following him like a shadow. You recognize the type. Lonely, overread, thinks quoting Virgil makes him irresistible. He chooses you. Of course he does. Upstairs, he fidgets while unbuckling his boots, as if the guilt might evaporate if he hesitates long enough. I don't usually, he starts to say. You cut him off with a soft practice smile. I know. They all say that. He asks about your favorite color. You lie and say blue. It's easier than saying, whatever color isn't bruised. He wants to talk about poetry, surprisingly. So you humor him. You remember enough from your 1 year with a literate aunt to recite half a line of Boethius. He gasps like you've performed alchemy. Historians still argue whether women in your trade were often literate. Most weren't. But some were, especially in cities like Venice and Avignon, where courtesanship occasionally straddled the line between flesh and finesse. The rare educated harlot was sometimes even respected in whispered circles, as if being able to read elevated your worth beyond skin. You entertain him with clever answers and vague smiles until he leaves lighter in spirit and purse. You watch from the window as he disappears down the alley, clutching his coat like a shield. You imagine him returning to his wife, muttering something about needing space for inspiration. Back downstairs, Helga counts coins with the detached precision of a gravedigger. She eyes you. You keep getting the scribes, she says. They like your face. You reply, they like that I laugh at their jokes. Which is also true. Dinner is stew. It's always stew. The meat might be rabbit. Might be rat. Nobody's asking. You eat quickly, burning your tongue, because it's better hot and vaguely alarming than cold and definitely stringy. Then comes the loud one. You hear him before he enters, boots slamming on cobbles, voice booming with drunken joy. A soldier, maybe, or a merchant pretending to be one. He pushes through the door. The smell of ale and smoke rushes in behind him like a curse. His gaze scans the room, lands on Mika. She stiffens. No escape now. You hate nights like these. You feel it in your spine, the way the mood shifts, the way silence folds around the girls like armor. Helga watches from the corner, ready to intervene but calculating the cost. Protection isn't free. And the city only intervenes when there's blood in the cobblestones and witnesses willing to point fingers. You slip upstairs, not because you're scared, but because there's no space left for watching. You light a candle and try to distract yourself with mending. Someone's corset needs patching. You poke your thumb twice before giving up. You lie back on a mattress and stare at the beams overhead. One of them is carved with a heart and a name, Edric plus M. You wonder if that was carved by a girl like you. If M hoped Edric would come back for her. Maybe he did. Maybe she ended up in another brothel, scratching his name off with a knife. Romantic tragedy comes cheap around here. Eventually, Mika returns. Her hair is tangled, one sleeve torn, but her lips are set in that firm, straight line that says, "Not tonight." She doesn't talk. She just curls up on the floor near the fire and closes her eyes. No one asks questions. Everyone offers quiet. This is the part the poets skip. The stillness after. The hollow that follows every encounter, whether it's soft or savage. It's not shame exactly. More like dust, settling in your lungs, making it hard to remember what you used to sound like when you laughed without calculation. You think about running away. Everyone does eventually. Maybe heading for the convent outside town. You heard they take women of unfortunate circumstances if they arrive with enough humility and enough coin. Two things you have in short supply. But here's the strange thing. Some girls come back, even after leaving. The world out there isn't always kinder. At least in the brothel, the rules are written, they're not predictable. Out there, the rot wears lace and asks for your hand before stealing your soul. You remember Mary. She left last year, married a butcher's apprentice. Came back 2 months later with a black eye and a baby in her arms. Said she missed the food. Everyone knew she meant the safety. You fall asleep thinking about that baby, wondering if it'll grow up knowing its mother once wore a badge, once lived behind red shutters, once sang lullabies in a room full of sighs. Maybe the baby won't need to. Maybe it'll learn to read. Maybe it'll be a scribe. You smile at the thought. Then the candle gutters, the wind howls through the shutters, and the night folds over you like a faded quilt. Morning greets you with stiff joints and the sour reek of last night's sweat mingling with stale candle wax. You rise slowly, toes brushing the cold floorboards, and stretch until your back cracks like dry twigs. The hearth has gone out, and someone's snoring nearby, probably Elise, curled like a cat near the still warm stones. You wrap your shawl tight and shuffle downstairs. The house is quieter in the mornings, like it's holding its breath. Helga is already in the kitchen, clanging about with an iron pan and muttering curses at a lump of bread that refuses to soften. She nods at you. It's the closest thing to affection she offers before her third cup of weak beer. You grab a crust and settle onto the bench, chewing slowly, trying not to remember the dream you woke from. Something about feathers and falling. Your dreams are rarely restful. A messenger arrives just as you're washing your face. He wears the badge of the city guard and carries a scroll tied with municipal ribbon, red and white. That can mean only one thing: summons. Inspections, Helga mutters. Again. You sigh because this means scrubbing every surface, hiding the unlicensed girls, and pretending everything here runs by the book. Which it doesn't. Not really. But enough coins to the right pockets keeps things just legal enough. You've seen the city inspectors before, half-bored clerks with bloated bellies and ink-stained fingers. They wear expressions like they've sniffed something sour and can't quite find the source. They ask questions like, have all your girls been seen by the physician this quarter? And do you maintain proper records of visitors? You lie with the confidence of someone who's lied every week of her adult life. The truth is, you have seen the physician. Once. He came in drunk, tried to diagnose one girl's cough by licking her hand. Historians still argue whether municipal health checks were genuine attempts at disease control or just another layer of performance for the sake of morality. Either way, they rarely helped anyone. You scrub floors until your knees ache. Mika polishes the brass candlesticks with spit and a rag. Elise hangs clean cloth over the windows to soften the brothel's rough edges. By mid-morning, everything smells like lie and desperation. When the inspectors arrive, they poke and prod like hens searching for bugs. One of them taps a wall with his stick and frowns, as if expecting sin to knock back. You stand beside Helga as she answers their questions, voice syrupy with forced charm. And you. One of them asks you, how long have you worked here? You reply with a number that feels safe. Not too new. Not too long. He nods, jotting something down, then smiles, a tight lipless thing. He says, you girls do more for public peace than most guards. You smile back. It doesn't reach your eyes. That afternoon, once they're gone, everyone collapses. You flop onto a bench and peel off your apron, arms aching. I wish the walls would knock back, Elise mutters. Maybe they'd ask those oafs to leave. You laugh, just a small one. But laughter feels good today, like a salve. Later, as the sun slants through the curtains, you help Mika with her ledger. She's one of the few girls who can write, though her script is messy and she forgets her columns. You sit beside her and tally coins, listing the names of clients in shorthand, nicknames like Red Nose, Pigeon Hat, Mumbler. Safer that way. She nudges you. Remember that guy who tried to pay in walnuts? How could I forget? You snort. Said they were from his private orchard. Mika chuckles, then grows quiet. He's dead now. Hanged for stealing lace from the Abbey. You blink. That was lace. Apparently, there's a strange comfort in this. Not his death exactly, but the reminder that even the oddest details in your life have their own crooked logic. In this world, everyone's just trying to steal a little softness before the next hard blow. You glance at the ledger. The numbers don't lie. Business has been slow. Winter's coming, and coin grows tight as bellies grow hungrier. Helga's already dropped hints about raising fees. And you know what that means? More pressure to take the rough ones, the strange ones, the ones who don't take no for an answer. You head to the market for more wax and bread before dusk. The sky hangs heavy with clouds, and the air smells like wet stone. On your way, you pass the cathedral. A group of novices is filing out, giggling like birds, their cheeks flushed with cold. One of them sees you. Her eyes widen. She's young, maybe 13. You see recognition flicker in her gaze. Not because she knows your name, but because she knows what you are. Her mouth tightens, and she looks away. You look at her and feel not shame exactly, not even envy, just distance, like you're watching yourself from another life. There was a time once when you wore shoes like hers, when you ran through wheat fields and thought kissing was the worst thing that could happen. That girl is still inside you somewhere, huddled and quiet, waiting for the right season to thaw. Historians still debate whether young girls enter the brothels by choice, coercion, or necessity. You could tell them, yes, it's never just one reason. It's a storm of reasons, all crashing together in the dark. Back at the house, you light a new candle and settle into the evening routine. You have one visitor tonight, a quiet merchant with kind eyes and rough hands. He asks for a story, not a song. You tell him one about a fisherman who falls in love with the moon. He listens with his eyes closed, murmuring at the end, "She never came down for him, did she?" "No," you say softly. But he still cast his nets in her light. Later, you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind scratch at the shutters like a lost cat. The days are all blurring together now. But this one had small things that mattered. Maybe that's enough. You wake to the sound of arguing in the alley. It's muffled, just raised voices, not quite shouting, but enough to draw you to the shutter and tilt it open a crack. Below, two men are squaring off beside a vegetable cart, one waving a turnip like a weapon. You watch them with the disinterest of someone who's seen far stranger things in far fewer clothes. You think about how thin the walls are in this town. Not just the wooden ones, the social ones, the moral ones, the kind that separate wife from mistress, merchant from beggar, sinner from saint. They're paper thin, and in your case, sometimes only separated by a single window pane. You close the shutter again and begin the ritual of getting dressed, layering linens and laces, smoothing folds, hiding bruises. Clothes are armor. Perfume is camouflage. The faint scent of lavender masks the smoke in your hair and the weariness in your bones. Downstairs, breakfast is barley porridge in silence. Elise looks like she hasn't slept. She fiddles with a chipped mug, staring into the steam as though it might give her answers. You don't ask. She'll speak when she's ready or not. Some girls turn quiet as time moves on, the way candles burn lower as dawn nears. Mid-morning brings a surprise, a priest at the door. Not one of the fire and brimstone types. This one's young, with eyes too soft for someone carrying eternal damnation in his satchel. He enters with an awkward bow, holds his hands together like he's praying not to catch scandal. Helga motions for you to stay nearby, just in case. Routine moral inspection, he says, voice cracking halfway through. To I assess spiritual well-being. You suppress a grin. Spiritual well-being in a brothel is like finding fresh snow in a chimney. He asks if any of the girls would like to confess. You and Helga exchange glances. She shrugs. Mika's Catholic, she offers. The priest's eyes brighten. Truly? Would she? No, Helga interrupts, already turning away. She's Catholic, not daft. You almost laugh. Almost. He leaves after half an hour with flushed cheeks and a copy of the Lives of the Saints, which Elise plans to use as a doorstop. It's heavy and pious and just the right thickness to keep her window open on summer nights. Still, his visit stirs conversation. Think he really wanted to help? Mika asks later. You shrug. Maybe. Maybe he's just trying to earn his bishop points. Historians still argue whether the church sincerely tried to rehabilitate women like you, or whether it merely sought to control bodies it couldn't fully cast out. Some abbeys offered reform for the penitent, but conditions were grim, and penance often meant a life of silence and sore knees. By mid-afternoon, the air grows thick with heat, and the brothel slows to a crawl. You and Elise take turns at the pump, fetching water for laundry. You scrub a chemise until your knuckles burn, watching the suds swirl down the cobbled runoff like some medieval potion. There's a rhythm to it. Scrub, dunk, wring, rinse. Like prayer, but with more blisters. Your thoughts drift as you work to the stories girls tell in the dark. About nobles who secretly love them. About babies born in haylofts. About clients who said, "Come with me," and actually meant it. Everyone has a story. Yours just hasn't been written yet. Or maybe it has, and you're just living it in real time, page after page of quiet, bruised survival. That evening, a special visitor arrives. You hear his boots before you see him. Too clean, too new. He walks like he owns the street and smells faintly of cloves. When he steps into the parlor, everyone goes still. A tax collector. Not the usual greasy kind. This one's young, pale, and smug, like a snake wearing velvet. He carries a ledger under one arm and smiles too slowly. I'm here to review Helga's figures, he says, voice like syrup that's just starting to sour. And perhaps sample the merchandise. You know this type. Power in soft hands. Punishment disguised as pleasantry. He speaks to Helga in hushed tones. You can hear snippets, underreported clients, licensing discrepancies, room surcharges. She tries to hold her ground, but her jaw tightens like a woman chewing nails. Eventually, she calls your name. You follow the tax collector upstairs. Not because you want to, because you have to. He's not rough, not cruel, but he's clinical. Detached, like someone inspecting cloth, not touching a person. After he buttons his coat, flips his ledger shut, and says, "You should be grateful. I could have fined you instead. You say nothing. Gratitude is cheap, and you can't afford it right now." Downstairs, Helga hands you a coin. "I'm sorry," she says, not meeting your eyes. You nod. What else is there? Later, as the house quiets, Elise finds you staring into the hearth. "You all right?" she asks. You pause. Then, "I was just wondering if fire remembers what it burns." She sits beside you, doesn't answer, just leans her shoulder against yours, and you both watch the flames dance. It's enough. Some nights, companionship is just silence with company. Before bed, You write a line in your secret book, scratched in charcoal between pages of old laundry tallies and flower sketches. The snake wore velvet today. I didn't bleed. Small mercies. You blow out the candle, the smoke curling into the darkness like a final sigh. The house is too quiet this morning. There's no clatter of pots from the kitchen, no arguing over who gets the hot basin first, no whispering about last night's drunkard who fell asleep mid-gesture. Just the creaking of beams and the low hum of a sleepy city beginning to stir outside your window. That kind of quiet means only one thing: bad news has arrived. And sure enough, when you make your way downstairs, it's written across every face like soot. Mika's gone. Elise says it plainly, like a fact she's still testing on her tongue. She doesn't cry, but her hands are balled up in her apron, white-knuckled. You sit slowly. Gone. Ran off. Took her bag. Left her necklace behind. You blink. That necklace, a crooked heart on a leather cord, she never took it off. Not even for the bishop's nephew, who offered to trade it for a brooch made of real amber. That necklace meant something. And now it's hanging on the wall peg like a goodbye note. She must have had help, Helga says, mostly to herself. No one just walks out alone in the dark. Not without a man. Not from here. Maybe she did. Or maybe she just finally stopped waiting for someone to say she could go. There's always a chance. Historians still debate how often women in your line escaped on their own versus being rescued. The truth, as usual, is messy. An escape is rarely clean. You spend the morning cleaning anyway. As if scrubbing the walls could erase the absence in the air. Elise hums quietly while she works. Not a song exactly. More like a thread she's using to stitch herself together. You let it be. Around noon, a new girl arrives. She's young, too young probably, with wide eyes and a mouth that won't stop apologizing. Her name is Agnes. She smells like sheep and smoke, and she carries all her belongings in a flour sack. Her shoes are mismatched, and her lip is still split from whatever family dispute brought her here. Helga gives her the house tour like she always does: rooms, rules, red lines. No stealing, no freelancing, no dying in the common room. The usual. You're tasked with training her. You want to protest, say it's too soon, that you're tired, but then you see the way Agnes watches everything, like the world is too big and she's been dropped into it upside down. You recognize that look. You remember being 16 and terrified, clinging to the idea that maybe someone here might care. You take her upstairs, show her how to fold her clothes to keep out bugs, how to place her basin so it won't catch leaks from the ceiling, how to warm a client's feet first in winter. It makes them less likely to slap. She listens hard, nods often, and asks nothing. That night, you sit with her while she eats. She pokes at her stew like she's afraid it might move. Is it always this quiet? She asks. No, you say, but quiet's a gift. Trust me. She nods again. And then softly, do you think Mika made it? You pause, spoon halfway to your mouth. I hope so, you answer. Because that's the kindest lie available. The door creaks open, and a client stumbles in, drunk, singing something that sounds vaguely French. Helga redirects him before he can topple over a table. Agnes jumps. You place a hand on hers. You don't have to see anyone tonight, you say gently. Tomorrow, we'll get you ready. Tonight, you just rest. It's not mercy. It's survival pacing. You've seen what happens when a girl is thrown in too fast, like meat into boiling water. They burn out or they break. After the stew, you help her make her bed. She's brought a little straw dolly hidden in her sack. You pretend not to see it. Some things don't need commenting. Elise finds you in the hallway afterward. You're good with her, she says. You shrug. Someone was good with me once. A beat. You think she'll last. You think about it. Really think. Maybe. If the taxes don't rise. If the guard doesn't come sniffing. If she keeps her head down. It's a lot of ifs. Historians still argue whether brothels were communities of support or nests of exploitation. You know better. They're both. Sometimes at the same time. You can be someone's family and their competition, their safety and their weight to carry. It's a strange sorority, forged in sweat and candle smoke. That night, you take the window bed. You like the view of the moon, especially when it's round and low over the rooftops, glowing like it's too full of secrets. You imagine Mika out there, somewhere under that same moon. Maybe with a sailor. Maybe in a stable. Maybe already caught and tossed back into something worse. But maybe, just maybe, she's free. You let yourself believe it. Just for tonight. Downstairs, Agnes is still awake. You can hear her pacing lightly back and forth, trying to wear a pattern into a place that isn't home yet. You whisper a quiet good night into the darkness, not really expecting an answer. But from below, barely loud enough to reach your ears, you hear good night. And for the first time in days, you sleep without dreams. You wake up to rain and a draft. The shutter creaks in rhythm with a drizzle outside, tapping just enough to irritate but not enough to be poetic. You pull the blanket over your head, hoping the world might mistake you for furniture and leave you alone today. No such luck. Downstairs, someone is arguing about eggs. Elise, probably. You can tell by the way the vowels pitch high like arrows. Something about a bad yolk and a worse attitude. Agnes sits at the table, eyes wide, clutching a spoon like it's a defensive weapon. You nudge her shoulder as you pass. It's okay. That's just how Elise says good morning. She grins, just barely. Good. A grin is progress. As you take your seat, you notice the usual faces, Helga wiping down the bar with a rag that may or may not be older than Agnes, a client passed out in the corner who's somehow both snoring and drooling at the same time, and leans scribbling in her usual ledger, tongue poking out with concentration. Numbers still lying to you, you ask. She doesn't look up. They always do. You spoon up a mouthful of porridge. It tastes like resignation. The conversation turns, inevitably, to Agnes. Last night was her first with a client. She came back up without tears, Elise says, impressed. She also came back up with 10 extra coins, Helga notes, raising an eyebrow. You're not sure if that's a good thing. Turns out her first client was a merchant with a taste for innocence and a surprising amount of patience. He left a glowing review, verbally at least, though he did take the soap on his way out. You check in with Agnes mid-morning. She's wiping down windows, sleeves rolled up, humming a tune from her village. She's softer today, not in spirit, but in the way she moves, like someone slowly adjusting to tight shoes. How do you feel, you ask? She shrugs. It wasn't as bad as I thought. You give a small nod. It gets worse. Then better. Then worse again. She laughs, actually laughs. You're terrible at encouragement. You're still here, aren't you? By noon, the weather has sunk everyone into a mood. The street outside has turned to slush, and clients come in wet, grumpy, and smelling like wet dog in boots. You draw the short straw and get the baker's apprentice, who talks through his nose and leaves flour smudges on the sheets. As you change the bedding afterward, Elise walks in carrying a bundle of letters. Guess who's been writing? She sings. You raise an eyebrow. Not your mother again. No. Mika, you stop moving. Seriously, she tosses the letter onto the bed. The parchment is creased, smudged, and smells faintly of fish oil. She made it to Bruges, Elise says. Sewing now. With a church widow. Claims she hasn't looked back. You stare at the looping, uncertain handwriting. Historians still argue whether letters like these were real or crafted to boost morale. You don't care. It's here, in your hand. And it's enough to lift the weight on your chest for just a minute. She says to tell Agnes not to believe everything she hears, especially about that thing with the honey and the bishop. Agnes, listening from the doorway, looks confused and slightly terrified. She'll understand later, you mutter. The rest of the day passes in patches. Lean gets into it with a tax collector's assistant who insists Helga underpaid last month's tavern licenses. She threatens to calculate his face. He leaves quickly. You catch Elise staring into space around dusk. You all right? She nods. Just thinking about home. You miss it. She pauses. No. I just wonder if they miss me. You know that feeling too well. The ghost of what you once were sometimes leans in when the candlelight gets too low. After dinner, you find Agnes fiddling with her straw doll again. She needs a name. You tell her. I was thinking, maybe Mika. You smile. She'd like that. The night clients roll in slower than usual. You get a traveling minstrel who sings through the entire appointment, hitting sour notes at crucial moments. He tries to pay in buttons. You manage to get half a silver. Elise deals with a man who won't make eye contact. She says it's refreshing. He seemed so disappointed in himself, she explains. I didn't even have to fake a climax. He apologized first. By the time midnight rolls around, the rain has eased, but the mood hasn't. A fight breaks out in the alley. Two men arguing over a missing boot. One throws a chicken. No one knows where the chicken came from. You and Agnes watch from the upper window, giggling like girls at a fair. You'll be all right. You tell her not just because she needs to hear it, but because you need to believe it too. Promise. You don't answer. But you hand her a coin, one of yours. For luck. She holds it tight. Later, in bed, you think about Mika and Bruges. About Agnes naming her doll after her. About the strange little legacy you all leave behind, not in fame or fortune, but in borrowed names, whispered stories, and extra coins passed hand to hand. The shutter taps once more in the wind. You finally fix it with a piece of string. Not perfect, but enough. Another market day, another morning of mud. You can tell before you even open your window, the smell is thick in the air. Cabbage, sheep, sweat, and wet wool. Someone down the street is already yelling about spoiled onions. It's comforting, in a way. The routine of other people shouting. Inside, things are slower. You move like treacle, and you're not alone. Agnes shuffles past you, her hair braided in a line that's somehow both crooked and determined. She's gotten into the habit of braiding everyone's hair now. Says it helps her think. Or maybe it's just something to control in a world where so little belongs to her. The brothel has been quieter these past few weeks. Fewer visitors, fewer coins, more sitting around pretending not to worry. Even Helga seems nervous, her brow furrowed as she takes stock of the pantry, the candles, the wine. She's counting like someone expects a reckoning. And maybe one's coming. Because today's buzz isn't about the market or the rain, or even the priest who tripped on his robes last Sunday and face-planted into a baptismal font. No, today's news rides in on the back of a crimson banner. The bishop's men are in town. Now, bishop's men don't come for fun. They come to inspect, to collect, or to condemn. Could be nothing, Elise says. Could just be taxes. Lean snorts. It's never just taxes. The tension thickens. Everyone starts acting extra proper, which mostly means Helga yells more and the rest of you wear cleaner aprons. You watch Agnes fuss with her sleeves and mutter prayers in her dialect. She still thinks someone might rescue her. She's still new enough to believe in mercy from men in robes. You want to tell her not to get her hopes up, but you don't. She'll learn. Or she won't. Historians still argue whether these inspections were truly about morality or just convenient cash grabs. Either way, when the bishop's men arrive, you pretend. You make beds, light candles, scrub things that didn't need scrubbing yesterday. When they finally knock, the whole house stops breathing. There are 3 of them. 2 young, 1 older. The older one has a scroll tucked into his belt and a face like old bread, wrinkled, dry, a little bitter. He speaks politely, but his eyes are weighing everything, the curtains, the rugs, the flesh. Helga steps forward, calm as ever. "Welcome to the Lily House," she says, like she's offering tea and not her soul. They inspect every room. They poke their heads into cupboards. One of the young ones tries to catch Elise changing and gets a shoe thrown at him. The older man just clears his throat and makes a note. When they reach your room, you smile. Just a little. Just enough to say I'm not scared, even if you are. They ask you questions. Are you treated well? Are you here of your own will? Do you pray? You answer carefully. Yes, yes. Occasionally. They leave nothing behind but unease. Later, Helga gathers you all in the common room. "They'll be back," she says simply. They didn't like the ledger. Or the wine. She doesn't say it, but you all know what it means. A bribe's expected. Or worse, a punishment's coming. The day drags on. No clients. Just nerves. Evening falls like a wet cloth, heavy and uncomfortable. Elise breaks the silence with a joke about the bishop's pants. Lean laughs too hard. Agnes doesn't laugh at all. She comes to you after dinner. "Did you ever have to confess?" You look up from your sewing. "To what?" "To what we do." You set your needle down. "Once. A priest told me to stop, then offered to rent my time." Her face falls. You soften. "Listen. You confess what you need to. But don't let them twist you into something that only feels holy when you're hurting." She nods slowly, though she still doesn't understand. That night, there are no candles. You lie in the dark, listening to rain and distant bells. And then a knock at the door. You freeze. It's late. Too late for clients. Too early for milk deliveries. Helga answers. Voices. Low dance. You creep halfway down the stairs, peering through the banister. It's one of the bishop's men, the younger one, the one with soft hands and shifty eyes. "I left my glove," he says. Helga doesn't move. "Bit suspicious," she says. "How many gloves you planning to lose tonight?" "I just want to look." You come down the stairs slowly. What's he looking for? He startles. "You," he says. "He mentioned you." You raise an eyebrow. "Ooh, the bishop." The room stills. Turns out the bishop has a proposition. Not a charge. Not a fine. A request. He wants someone to attend a gathering at the cathedral. Not for worship. For entertainment. You feel the walls close in. Helga gives you a look that isn't quite in order, but not a suggestion either. You nod. "I'll go." Later, when you're washing and brushing and dressing in your best, Agnes helps lace your bodice. "You don't have to," she whispers. You laugh. "Sweetheart, I definitely do." The cathedral is cold and echoing, lit by torches and secrets. You perform. Not in the way that shames, in the way that survives. You flatter, you flirt, you make the bishop laugh. You see the hunger behind his eyes and hold your posture like a fortress. At the end, you're dismissed with coins and compliments. "You have a certain tact," he says. You curtsy low. Outside, the air smells of wet stone and smoke. You walk home alone, fists clenched around your payment. When you return, Helga meets you at the door. "Well," she asks. You drop the coins into her hand. "We're safe. For now." She sighs, half relief, half resignation. Upstairs, Agnes waits with warm tea and a tighter braid than usual. You smile. Sometimes all you can do is return. Breathe. Pretend you have control over what comes next. The shutters are quiet tonight. That's something. You wake up sore and stiff, but still here. Your jaw aches from smiling too much the night before, and your cheeks hurt in that very specific way reserved for false laughter. But the house is quiet, peaceful even. No shouting downstairs. No boots stomping through the hall. Just the smell of stale bread and candle wax, and the low hum of Helga humming to herself in the kitchen. For now, the bishop's men are gone, paid off in silver and smiles. You bought the house another week, Maybe a month if no one asks questions. Still, a weight sits in your chest like cold soup. Better than to relax. You come down the stairs to find Agnes at the hearth, trying to scrape burnt porridge off the bottom of a pot. Her braid's crooked this time, and there's a smudge of ash on her nose. She doesn't notice you at first, just keeps muttering curses that wouldn't impress a sailor. Porridge offended you again? You ask, easing into the bench beside her. She startles, then grins. It fought back. Looks like you lost. She holds up the spoon. Not yet. The days blur now. They settle into a rhythm, which is almost worse than chaos. Because when things run too smoothly, that's when your mind has time to wander. To ask questions like, is this forever? Is this all I'll be? There's a certain brutality in stillness. You spend your morning brushing linens and airing out a room that smells faintly of cabbage and musk. Agnes trails behind you, holding a sprig of lavender like it might actually fight off the stench. You ever think about leaving? She asks suddenly. You pause. Every day. What stops you? You smile, faint and tired. The same thing that stops everyone. Nowhere to go. Historians still argue whether brothel workers in medieval towns had the option to leave, or if that idea was more fiction than fact. In truth, some escaped. Some were freed. Some just vanished into other names, other roles, maybe even marriage. But most stayed. Because leaving costs more than money. It costs safety, identity, even purpose. And sometimes it's just too late to start over. You spend the afternoon patching Elise's work dress again. The fabric's been mended so many times it's more stitch than cloth. She insists on keeping it because it's lucky. You suspect she's just stubborn. You're good at this, she says as you thread another needle. Decent, you reply. Better with thread than people. She raises an eyebrow. You antisocial. You're everyone's favorite. You scoff. That's just because I listen. Exactly, she says, eyes narrowing. And no one listens anymore. You think about that for a moment. Listening does feel like a rare currency in a world obsessed with noise. Later, a new client arrives, a traveler from the south, dressed in layers and smelling like rose oil. His hands are too smooth, his teeth too white. Something about him doesn't fit. Helga catches your eye. He's rich, she mutters under her breath, and bored. Watch your purse. You take him upstairs. He asks too many questions. Where are you from? What do you dream about? If you could change one thing, what would it be? You tell him the truth. I'd have a door with a lock that works from the inside. He laughs, like it's a clever joke. When he leaves, he drops a gold coin on the table and says, "For your time." And your honesty. You stare at it for a long moment. When you go downstairs, Helga takes one look and whistles. Well, I suppose you are everyone's favorite. You roll your eyes. He asked about dreams. I gave him the discount answer. Later, as you sweep the front room, you find Agnes crouched by the hearth, her doll tucked under her arm, whispering something to it. You pause. What's she saying? You ask. She's learning. Agnes replies solemnly. About what? Agnes shrugs. About us. About how to be. You don't know whether to smile or cry. That evening, the girls light candles and sing. A silly habit. Old songs. Lean bangs a spoon against a cup in time with Elise's clapping. Even Helga hums along for a few bars before retreating to her corner, muttering about noise and broken mugs. You join in, because why not? Because laughter is rare and singing is free. The room feels warmer than usual. You think back to the early days, when you first arrived, not much older than Agnes. All bone and doubt, with hands too soft for survival. You remember your first client, your first coin, your first night not crying. Agnes catches your eye and grins mid-song. She's still a little broken, but she's mending in places you recognize. Places you still carry. After the singing fades and the candles burn low, Helga passes around a jug of plum wine. Not much, just enough for a shared sip each. A toast, she says, holding it high. To the quiet days. You all repeat it like a charm. To the quiet days. Because the loud ones never bring good news. As you get ready for bed, Elise lingers at your door. You ever think about what you'd be doing if none of this had happened? All the time. What do you see? You smile faintly. Me? Both. Eating oranges. She snorts. Oranges. You ever had one? No. They taste like possibility. She laughs and walks away. You lie down and stare at the ceiling. It's cracked in 3 places. You know each crack like a friend. Outside, the night is still. For once, no fights in the alley. No boots on the stairs. Just the soft sound of someone snoring through the wall. You let your eyes close. And for a moment, just a breath of a moment, you imagine the taste of oranges. Morning comes not with birdsong, but with the shrill squawk of a market hawker 2 streets away, shouting about turnips like their treasure. Your eyes open slowly, your body reluctant to follow. There's a cold spot where your foot slips out from under the blanket, and you drag it back like a soldier retreating from frostbite. But your eyes anyway. Downstairs, Helga is already knee-deep in haggling with a baker's apprentice over a sack of rye. You hear her voice, sharp and unfazed, as she knocks 2 copper off the price just by raising an eyebrow. She's been doing this too long to pay full price for bread. You slip past, unnoticed, into the rear courtyard. The morning air bites at your neck. You breathe deep. Damp stone, chimney soot, slight undertone of manure. Another blessed day in paradise. Agnes joins you a minute later, wrapping her shawl tight. I heard a rumor, she says, which is how most trouble starts. You raise an eyebrow. They say someone from the Duke's house visited the stables. That's very nice for the stables. No, she says, grinning. Our stables. You know, next door. You pause. That is new. The brothel shares a wall with an old livery, mostly used for storing firewood and drunken apprentices these days. If a noble's man visited there, it likely wasn't for the smell of hay. Helga confirms it before lunch. She doesn't say much, just drops the news like she's placing another candle on the table. Possible patronage, she says. Someone looking for discretion. You've heard that before. Nobles love discretion, usually because they've lost their taste for consequences. Historians still argue whether noblemen visiting brothels showed how normalized the trade was, or whether it exposed just how exploitative and lopsided it all truly remained. Either way, their presence always stirred trouble. Gold and gossip are never far apart. That afternoon, you clean your best dress. It smells faintly of old wine and rosemary. Elise helps you with the laces, humming something off-key. I hope he's handsome, she teases. I hope he's boring, you reply. The noble arrives under a hood. Not exactly subtle, but certainly trying to be. He's young, too young to carry the weight in his voice. His boots are polished. His gloves are suede. He smells like nutmeg and arrogance. Helga greets him personally, all smiles and subtle calculations. I need someone who won't talk, he says flatly. You volunteer before anyone else can. Upstairs, he drops his hood. Handsome, in the way wax statues are handsome, symmetrical, but cold. His name is Wendell. Or he says it is. You assume it's fake. He doesn't ask much of you. Just that you sit beside him. Listen, keep a secret. I'm to marry someone, he mutters, sipping wine. Congratulations. She's 12. You blink. Less congratulations. He shrugs. She's the bishop's niece. You can't say no to holy blood. So you say yes and come here to feel something real? He doesn't answer. You sit in silence for a while. Then he looks at you. Really looks. Why are you here? You consider your usual lie, burnt farm, dead husband, cruel stepfather. But something about him, about the way he clutches the wine glass like it might shatter if he doesn't control it, makes you tell the truth. Because there was nowhere else. He nods. Me too. He pays in gold. Leaves without touching you. You wonder if he'll come back. He does. Twice more that week. Always just to talk. Sometimes to cry. Once to fall asleep sitting up while you hum some lullaby from a village you don't even remember the name of. He doesn't ask your name, and you don't offer it. By the fourth visit, Helga gives you a curious glance. You breaking hearts now? You shrug. He's already broken. Nobles like Wendell come and go, but they never stay. Still, there's something unsettling in his presence, like a mirror you didn't want to look into. Lean isn't impressed. I'd rather a brute who finishes in 10 seconds than a noble who sobs on my shoulder. Agnes disagrees. It's nice. Like he sees you as a person. You chuckle. No, he sees me as a priest. Just one who doesn't make him kneel. The girls laugh, and someone throws a pillow. That night, you dream of silk sheets and long corridors. Of being a lady in a tower, hair combed by servants, meals arriving on platters instead of crusty wooden trays. But even in your dream, you keep glancing at the door, waiting for it to open. Waiting for someone to say you don't belong. You wake with that feeling still in your chest. The next morning, Wendell doesn't come. Nor the next. You're not surprised. Nobles vanish like mist, especially when they're close to being wed. Still, there's a strange hollowness in the house now, like you've lost a familiar ghost. Elise notices your silence. You miss him. I miss someone looking at me like I wasn't a job. She sits beside you. You're not just a job. You smile faintly. Neither are you. Downstairs, Helga has bad news. There's talk of a new ordinance. Tax. Or a curfew. Or both. You say. Wonderful. Word is, she continues, someone in the bishop's family is behind it. A niece wants the brothel shut down. You and Helga share a look. Of course. Of course, Wendell's marriage would cost you something, even from a distance. You laugh bitterly. Guess he got holy after all. That night, you light a candle and let it burn down just to watch something vanish slowly. Agnes brings you a slice of honey bread she saved. We'll be alright, she says. You nod, because that's what you do. You outlast. You endure. And in the morning, you'll do it all over again. There's a certain heaviness in the air now, like the skies pressing down on the rooftops just a little harder than usual. Even the crows seem quieter, as if they've heard the news too. Word travels fast when it's bad. It flits through alleyways and between shutters, tucked into whispers and pieced together in bread lines. The new law is no longer a rumor. It's official. The bishop's niece, yes, the same one, has pushed through a moral ordinance. All brothels within city walls must pay triple taxes. Those who can't, shutter their windows, lock their doors, leave. You sit in the kitchen, staring at a chipped cup of barley tea, while Helga reads the scroll aloud like it's a joke with no punchline. Lean groans. Tripled. That's more than the cut purse makes in a week. Elise frowns. Can they really do that? Of course they can, Helga mutters. Holiness is the best excuse for robbery. You remember Wendell's face, the way he sipped wine like it was penance, the weight in his shoulders, the fear in his eyes. And you wonder if he knew. If he could have warned you. If he tried and failed. Or if, like most men of his kind, he simply looked away. Agnes doesn't say anything. She just sits cross-legged by the hearth, sewing up a sock with holes in both heels. The conversation shifts quickly from disbelief to strategy. It always does. That's the nature of survival. Feelings are a luxury. Rent is not. Helga's plan is simple. Cut costs, sell what can be spared, and keep the highest-paying clients close. Only the ones with deep pockets and shallow morals, she says, tapping a ledger. You already know what that means. More noblemen. More discretion. less choice. Later that evening, a man comes to the door asking for you by name. You don't recognize him, but you know his type, servant to someone powerful. You can tell by his hands, rough from labor but clean, by his cloak, too fine for someone not born to it. He doesn't enter, just passes along a message. The young lord regrets he cannot return. He wishes you well and safety. No name, no seal, just a voice borrowed for distance. You close the door and lean against it. Not sad, not surprised, just tired. You spend the next week in a blur of effort. You polish boots, mend curtains, sew ribbons onto dresses that haven't felt new in years. You charm clients, pour drinks, and slip coin into a hidden crack behind the bed frame. An old habit, just in case you need to run. Helga starts trading favors with a local apothecary for cheap herbs, mainly for sleep and soreness, though there's a whispered understanding that some mixtures serve other purposes. She won't say what. You don't ask. Historians still argue whether medieval brothels acted as informal health centers, especially for women who had nowhere else to go. In truth, many madams kept an arsenal of home remedies, passed down like secret spells, not just to keep the girls working, but to keep them alive. One night, Elise comes back pale and shaking. You find her in the washroom, scrubbing her hands raw. "He hit me," she says quietly, then cried after. You hold her for a long time. Say nothing. Just wait until her shaking fades. Lean slips in later and presses a small amulet into Elise's hand. "Protection," she says. "Or luck. Maybe both. It's shaped like a tiny iron heart. Probably stolen. Possibly cursed. Doesn't matter." Elise wears it from then on. That week, the taxes arrive. A man with a scroll and a smirk collects the money like he's owed a tip. Helga pays him in full barely. When he leaves, the silence in the room is sharp enough to cut bread. Next month, Agnes whispers. Helga shakes her head. "We'll figure it out. You know what she means, raise rates, accept worse clients, maybe sell jewelry, furniture, favors. You've seen it before. In other towns, other houses. The slow unraveling." Agnes pulls you aside later. "I had a dream," she says. "We lived on a boat. It had windows made of glass." You smile. "That's a fine dream. There were oranges." You blink. "Did Elise tell you that?" "No." "You did. A while ago." "I remembered." You kneel down. "You're listening." She nods. "You're worth listening to. Something about that hits deeper than you expect." That night, you take out your secret stash from behind the bed. It's not much. A few silver pieces, a gold coin from Wendell, a charm given to you by a blind woman once in exchange for a story. You run your fingers over the edge of the coin, wondering what it could still buy. Not freedom. Not safety. Maybe a ticket out. But to where? You fall asleep to the sound of rain on the shutters. In the dream, the boat returns. This time, it's sinking. No one is steering, and the oranges are rotting in crates tied with silk. You wake before it hits the rocks. Downstairs, Helga is at the table with ink-stained hands and a ledger full of numbers that don't add up. She doesn't look up when she speaks. We'll start turning away the small coins. Focus on the lords, the merchants, the ones who leave with empty pockets and empty hearts. You ask. She finally meets your eyes. Ideally, you exhale. Not. Because what else can you do? The city around you keeps churning. New faces pass through the door. Some polite, some cruel. All temporary. A few bring gossip. The bishop's niece is pregnant now. Wendell is being sent to another city. The ordinance is expanding. Another house has already shut its doors. You sweep the steps and wonder if the sky's gotten darker, or if it's just your imagination. Either way, the storm's coming, and you'll be here when it hits. You're up before the sun again, though you're not sure if you ever really slept. just drifted in and out of half dreams, your brain rehashing numbers, names, door creaks, and coin that never seemed to pile high enough. Outside, the city is muffled in fog thick enough to bite. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and step into the street like a ghost might, slowly, deliberately, and mostly unseen. The house is quiet. Too quiet. Elise is still in bed, pale under her covers. Agnes, already up, nurses a bruised ankle from a client who thought no meant, maybe later. You want to ask who, but you already know. It's one of the new ones. The ones with rings on their fingers and secrets in their boots. Lean is in the corner, stitching pearls onto a neckline with the patience of a saint and the commentary of a pub brawler. I swear, she mutters, if one more lord calls me wench like it's a compliment, I might throw a soup ladle at his head. You smile without laughing. It's not funny anymore. You're all tired. The taxes are bleeding the house dry. The nobles know it. The church knows it. And they all want something from you. Silence, smiles, warmth in the cold. But no one gives anything back except silver and problems. Helga calls a meeting in the back room after lunch. Everyone's there, even Elise, wrapped in a blanket like it's armor. We need a decision, Helga says, voice thin but steady. We either take on a patron or we close. You look around a room. Blank stares. Grim faces. Patronage. It's not uncommon. One powerful man sponsors a house, pays its taxes, keeps it open, demands absolute loyalty. Sometimes he just wants favors. Sometimes he wants ownership. Sometimes worse. You mean, sell the house? Elise asks quietly. Helga shakes her head. No. Just tie it to someone too rich to let it fail. Historians still argue whether medieval brothels truly gained protection from wealthy patrons or whether the protection was just gilded control. It's a blurry line. When survival looks like dependents dressed in velvet. You speak up. Do we get a say in who? Helga pauses. If you can bring one in, I'll listen. So you think. Hard. And you remember someone. Not Wendell. He's long gone. Whisked away to some cathedral-choked city, married to someone whose shoes probably cost more than your whole wardrobe. But there was another, an older merchant, thick hands, booming voice, used to hiring guards more than girls. You saw him once at a feast. He watched you like a man memorizing a song. You find him 2 streets over, outside the spice shop. He smells like peppercorns and ambition. Come to beg, he says, not unkindly. Come to bargain, you reply. His name is Barrack. He likes chess and dried figs and doesn't believe in modesty unless it's profitable. You meet twice. Once at a tavern. Once behind the churchyard. You explain the house's value, how you girls aren't just bodies, but ears and mouths. How whispers get traded in your rooms like coin. How power isn't just swords and seals. It's secrets. And you have them. He considers. Why should I help your kind, he asks. You don't flinch. Because we survive. We adapt. And we see everything. He strokes his beard. And if I said yes, what do I get? Access. Eyes on your rivals. Warmth, if you want it. Silence, if you don't. He smiles. You're better at this than most merchants I know. I've had better teachers. He agrees on the spot. You don't smile. Not yet. When you return to the house and tell Helga, she lets out a breath that's half relief, half defeat. Well, she says, at least now the vultures might circle someone else. Barrack's gold keeps the shutters open. The taxes are paid. Even the stairs get fixed, the first creakless step in months. But with every coin comes a weight. Barrack wants names. He wants reports. He wants the same loyalty he'd expect from a spy. You're not surprised. You take on the role because no one else wants it. You track who visits, who talks too much, who might be useful, who might be dangerous. It's exhausting. Elise watches you with worry. Agnes tries to distract you with bedtime stories she makes up from nothing. In one of them, you're a princess who owns a tavern and charges knights 5 gold to look at her. You laugh. You wish. Lean grows colder. She doesn't like Barrick's presence. Says he smells like someone who'd sell a child for coin if it bought him a better seat at dinner. You don't argue. But the bed is warmer now. The food better. No one's turned out in weeks. Then something changes. A rival house across town burns down. Rumor says it was an accident. But you hear whispers in Barrick's tone that make your stomach twist. Helga hears them too. He's marking territory, she mutters one night. And we're part of it now. You want to be angry. You want to storm out. But where would you go? Who would take you? This is the cost. And you're paying it. One evening, you find a letter on your pillow. No seal. No name. Just one line. You're doing what needs to be done. Don't forget who you are. You stare at it until the candle gutters out. You don't recognize the handwriting. Maybe it's Helga. Maybe Elise. Maybe Barrick, though that seems unlikely. Or maybe it's a warning. Or a comfort. You fold it into your sleeve and never mention it. That night, you sit by the window. The city stretches out below like a breathing thing, heavy with secrets. You wonder how long the house can last. How long you can last. But for now, the shutters are still open. And the candles still burn. Winter comes like a thief. Not all at once. First, it's the morning frost that clings to the cobbles just long enough to make someone slip. Then it's the wind, creeping down chimneys and under doors like it has a grudge. Finally, it's the way the bread gets smaller while the price gets bigger. You're older now. Not by much in years, but in where? In quiet knowledge. In the way you notice everything. Who tips with copper, who with silence, who never looks you in the eye. You notice when Elise starts sleeping later. When Helga forgets to lock the till. When Agnes begins scribbling maps in charcoal. Little dreamland she calls maybe. Maybe here, she says, tapping a crooked river. Maybe we open a tea house. You humor her. Not because it's silly, but because it's sweet. Because hope, however improbable, is better than nothing. Helga walks with a limp now. An old injury, she says, though you know better. That fight with the tax collector months back didn't end in words. Lean's gone quieter. Less fire, more flint. One night, she admits she's been saving money to buy her way out. You don't ask where she'll go. You just press a coin into her palm when no one's looking. Some nights you still meet with Barrick. He has more gray in his beard now. He talks about trade routes, corrupt judges, and once, without irony, the weather. He hasn't asked for services in weeks. Maybe because he's bored. Maybe because he's growing fond. That part you're not sure about, and don't particularly want to be. Historians still debate whether women like you, in positions like this, ever truly held power. Whether proximity to influence meant real autonomy, or just a prettier cage. The records are unclear. Probably because no one bothered to write down your version of events. There's a slow kind of tension brewing now. Brittle calm. The bishop's niece, still wielding her influence like a blade, is pushing for a new Purification Act. A clean sweep of moral threats. That means gambling dens, taverns, and brothels. Yours is named in a public list. Congratulations, Lean mutters. We made it onto parchment. It's meant to be funny. But no one laughs. The choices shrink. Stay and fight? Risk arrest? Or worse, flee? Start again somewhere colder, smaller, with fewer patrons and even fewer protections? Helga sits at the table one night, counting the coins like she's performing a ritual. We can buy a wagon, she says. Maybe two. Head east. Disappear. Elise looks scared. Agnes excited. Lean skeptical. You? You feel tired. but ready. So you pack, quietly, over days. A pair of good boots, a cloak that still smells like summer. Your hidden stash, more weighty than you remembered. Enough. You leave the house with the shutters still open, one candle burning in each window. A message to any girl who walks past. We were here. We lived. You travel by moonlight, always moving, always watching. At the next town, you don't say you were a harlot. You say you were a singer, a storyteller, a seamstress, and no one questions you. The group stays together for a while, enough to feel like family. Eventually, Elise finds a healer to apprentice under. Agnes is taken in by a kind old woman who likes her maps and her laughter. Lean? She finally disappears with a sailor. You never find out where. Helga stays by her side. I was always meant to die in a rocking chair, she jokes. Might as well find one with a view. You settle in a coastal village where the air smells like salt and fish and freedom. You open a shop, not a brothel, but a warm place with tea and scars and books passed from hand to hand. People come for comfort and stay for your stories. The young girls listen wide-eyed. The old women nod knowingly. The men keep quiet. You never say what you were. But sometimes, in the soft hour between dusk and dark, you let it slip. In a word, a gesture, a name dropped like a pebble. You dream less of oranges and boats now, more of firelight, blankets, safe hands. Sometimes a stranger comes in with a familiar look, the kind that's seen too much. You offer them tea, a seat, and silence. And sometimes they stay. And that's enough. Now, as the candle flickers low and the story settles like snow on a quiet field, you find yourself drifting back from the cracked stones and smoky alleyways of that old medieval city. The noise fades. The smells soften. The cold lifts from your bones. You're safe now. The streets behind you are empty. The house with the shuttered windows? Just a memory, etched in wood and whispers, vanished with the dawn. The girls you knew, the laughter you shared, the choices you made, they've all melted into something quieter, something peaceful. The journey was never easy. It wasn't meant to be. But you endured. And in that, there is something beautiful, something strong, something no one can ever take. Let your breath slow now. Let your body sink just a little deeper into the mattress. Maybe there's a fan humming in the corner, a soft breeze brushing your cheek. Or maybe it's just the stillness you've been waiting for. The world will wait for you until morning. You did enough. You are enough. And now, at last, you can rest. Good night.